Hello, and welcome to the Art of Living Well podcast. I'm Stephanie May Potter, and I'm here with my co-host, Marnie Dotches-Marmette.
We created the Art of Living Well podcast to empower you to live your happiest, healthiest, and most authentic life. Each week, we will bring you inspiring and motivating conversations covering health and wellness topics, including fitness, mindset, food, travel, product reviews, and strategies from a variety of experts, including our own bank of knowledge.
We are excited to educate, motivate, and inspire you to change the way you perceive health and discover your art of living well. Get ready to feel inspired.
Stephanie and I had such an amazing experience last week. We went to Healing Elements Yoga and Massage Studio in St. Anthony Park, which is really on the cusp of St. Paul and Minneapolis. And we went there and we took just a wonderful yoga class. We each had our, own massages. I had like an integrated massage, which I've never had before. And the therapist was so wonderful. What did you have?
I had a deep tissue and I had so much inflammation going on in my body. It was wonderful, wonderful. Probably one of the best massages I've had. It's such a welcoming community too, Marnie. Like we sat before our massage and yoga class and we had tea. They have like a little, tea coffee shop area and a retail space.
Which had the cutest little things. Like I could just spend time kind of browsing around in there.
Yes.
And it's such an authentic place. Like you really could feel that welcoming community and
just inclusiveness and connectedness, really.
And they have so many different services they offer. They have all different kinds of yoga classes, meditation classes, massage therapy. They're doing workshops and special events.
And you can actually sign up to have like a massage membership. So if you are someone that...
Which is so cool.
Yes. So Healing Elements has an amazing offer for all of our listeners. First-time customers can receive a 1 week of unlimited yoga classes for free and $15 off a massage treatment. Head on over to our show notes and you'll get the promo code. You can either book online or you can call the studio.
I cannot wait to go back.
Either can I. Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the Art of Living Well podcast. We're here today to provide you with a little bit of hope and support for all of you out there given the current pandemic of the coronavirus. And we realize that this lockdown situation that most of us are all in are really causing people to feel anxious and depressed, stressed, and fearful of the unknown. Many people out there are feeling scared and helpless, and we want to let you know that you're not alone. So we are very fortunate to bring today a dear friend of mine, Kirsten Rewey, who is a psychotherapist who works with adults struggling with anxiety and depression, families in crisis, and she also works with teens. We're bringing her on to talk about the elephant in the room, talk about mental health, and we're going to dive into anxiety. She's going to share and define really what anxiety is, why it happens, what it feels like. And more importantly, she will talk about and share narratives that she is seeing in her current clientele as well as just throughout the community, including her own family. And whatever you're feeling right now, there's someone else out there that feels the same. And Kirsten will share with everyone she calls them 101 therapy tools for managing anxiety that will be very useful now, but honestly, these will be great tools to have in your toolbox for your entire life. So with that, let's get started.
Kirsten, we are so glad that you're with us today. So thank you for coming on. We're doing a bonus episode, just given the current coronavirus pandemic, and we want to talk about mental health and get your insight as to what you're seeing in your practice and even just in your community with the people around you. I think everyone's feeling a bit anxious, even those that maybe don't run anxious to begin with. But most of us have never been through a government mandated lockdown of any sort in our lifetime. So this is clearly unprecedented time. And maybe before we dive in, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about just kind of baseline anxiety and this current situation and what you're seeing in your practice.
And what it even means to have anxiety or to feel
Right.
anxiety.
Right. Well, I think we all can on some level understand what it feels like to be nervous or anxious or have fear. And you're right when you said, Steph, that, all of us have different sort of baseline levels of that. Some people truly run with anxiety kind of on a high inside of them at all times. And other people really don't experience that. They have just a much more calm, general way of conducting their life and just feeling. And a lot of it is just truly the way their system is wired, and can also be impacted by life experiences and traumas that they may or may not have endured. And so, what we have to sort of embrace is that a certain amount of anxiety is natural and is protective, and that when we feel it, we have to, rather than fear it or want to push it away, take notice of it. A lot of the work that I do is around helping people identify what and why the anxiety presented itself. So we have to think about people in terms of this, the things that are impacting their life, the system that they're in, even just the choices that they've made in the few days leading up to the feeling that they have. So we kind of back up, let's look at the few days leading up to the day you felt really anxious or really sort of heightened, sometimes it's the heart racing, sometimes it's just a nervous energy, sometimes it's a loss of appetite, inability to sleep. It can present for different people in different ways, or just wanting to kind of shut down. And so by looking at that, backing it up and looking, we can often say, wow, I haven't been eating well, or I haven't been taking great care of myself, or I had an interaction with someone that didn't feel good. And, so we have this sort of at least I use this little acronym that we run through that, looks at these different points that says, what are the things that might have brought this on for you? And so in light of what we're dealing with right now, I don't know, anyone could not have a certain amount of feeling of fear and anxiety, because, it's protective. It's like all of our usual things that help us feel calm and regulated, our routines, our rituals, just connection, that's all being disrupted. And our system is saying, whoa, this doesn't feel good. I feel fearful. I don't know when the end is in sight. So there's just all these pieces that are playing out, to make us feel anxious right now. And it's a really natural thing. And we just have to be, I think, really kind to ourselves and understanding that this is really hard, and it's okay to feel fearful and anxious. And that is a really natural response to our current situation.
So what kind of narratives are you hearing from your clients in your practice, or patients that, I don't know if you call them clients or patients, but the people that you're seeing in your practice, and maybe, some of our listeners can kind of take a little bit of solace in knowing that they are having similar feelings.
Yeah.
Are you seeing any trends right now?
Yeah. Well, this has been, I think, one of the most interesting things about the work, very unique work that I do, is that people's experiences are very real for them. So if someone comes in and is literally having what I would call just, full body, complete panic, shutdown over, just going to a social event that night that makes them nervous and overwhelmed. And another person could be dealing with huge, loss and maybe even a diagnosis that is completely overwhelming. And to each person, their experience is very real to them, and their grief is very real, and their, how dysregulated they are is very real to them. And it's not upon me then to decide if their situation, I try to help maybe offer perspective, but in the end of the day, we really each need to kind of meet someone where they are, and in their world, this is a really huge thing. So some of the common themes I'm seeing or hearing, in my office space is, there's so much loss just in the immediate. It's like this shock of, I had a couple in that was just going to start trying to have a child, and there was like already some fertility worries, and now all of that is on hold. And so, there's just this immense grief. They both just were very tearful through the whole time. And then, another young woman I talked to is in college, and she was on the West Coast, and so they've been hit and are a little ahead of us in that process. And for her, it's like, I was just getting in the stride of my college experience, and now it's being taken from me, and it was so sudden, and I didn't get an opportunity to say goodbye to people. And then, for others, it's just, wow, I'm trying to figure out how to be with my family in this way that is incredibly just intense and all consuming. And I'm trying to convey some amount of normalcy when inside I'm also dealing with that this doesn't feel good. And I think that's that balance of, we're all going through this at the same time. And how do I take care of myself, but also, take care of the people around me and try not to bring them down.
And I think you nailed it right there by saying that. How do we take care of ourselves and take care of our families and the people around us? And that's, we're in this situation now that's so new to everybody. So we're all kind of on this common ground here.
Yeah. Well, and I know, that's one of the things I was just talking with a bunch of my fellow helpers out there, mental health people. And we were all saying, it is similar to the role of being a parent in that I, as a mental health provider, I'm going through this at the exact same time as my clients. So I am sitting here oh boy, I totally relate to everything you're saying. I'm just, it's not like, when someone typically comes in their situation, I can stay pretty objective. Right now, I'm completely in it with them. And so it's a really unique experience that we're all facing. And we're kind of trying to, build the boat and row it at the same time. It's really not something we have a guide in how to do this best. But I think one of the things that I'm trying to do, not only as a parent, but in my professional life, is just stay really honest with the people around me about how I feel. I'm just genuinely staying very present to and being humble in this process of I'm sorry if I'm not doing this in the way that, is offering you the best support, but, we're all muddling along and sharing what is working and, and reflecting, saying, because I think what I'm doing, particularly with my kids and clients, is just even saying how are you in this very moment? What has worked for you today? What are the things that are weighing heavy on you? And then just all of us just having this common ground of telling our narrative and feeling less alone in those stories. I think whenever we hear other people's stories, we hear something that resonates for ourselves, and just that is so comforting.
Yeah. And I think, you started talking about you're going through this at the same time as your clients, and as parents, we're going through it at the same time as our kids are. And normally when you're a parent, you've been through school or some of the other typical challenges your kids may face, you probably have experienced to some degree, and you can help and provide that solace. And so getting to the anxiety piece, I think it's important as parents, as though we may feel very anxious because we've now got jobs are being impacted, lots of people are losing jobs, and you don't want your kids to see that and kind of share that anxiety with them, right? Mm-hmm. But then as far as providing solace, we're going through it at the same time. We don't know, that everything is an unknown. So when your kids ask questions, it's a lot of being open and honest and saying I don't know, but here's how we're going to deal with it, or taking one day at a time, right? And helping them see the silver lining. So what, maybe some thoughts or advice you have for parents or anyone really, when you have kids that are starting to feel a little bit anxious or noticing your behaviors, given this situation, because it is such a big unknown at this point, right?
Yeah.
And even just to add to that, like Stephanie mentioned, to answer their questions, like, are we ever going to go back to school? Is our life going to be normal again?
When can I play with my friends?
Yeah, like we don't have answers to these questions ourselves. So
Right.
What is the best way to manage that?
Yeah. Well, I love this question because I always say, like, feelings and emotion and the tone that we bring to the world is incredibly contagious. And I do feel like sometimes when I'm in the presence of a client, I feel very overwhelmed by their story, or even, just this situation that we're all facing right now. It's very overwhelming to me, but I don't feel like it's my job to go to my worst fears in this and pour that out. I really try to stay managed internally and allow it to not sort of tow me under, because I know that what everyone is ultimately seeking is a sense of hope and calm and peace. And it doesn't mean that we can't express the concerns or tell the truth. It's not even about, sort of having this like denial of reality to our children or anyone else. It's about sort of recognizing what they can manage, and our kids are looking to us. And if we can convey a certain amount of just like, we're going to get through this, these are all the good things that are going on right now, we're all muddling along one day at a time. And I always say, like, too, like, just focusing with your kids, but also with yourself on a few things that are within your realm of control. Because although there's a lot that right now feels out of our control and feels scary, we always have to focus on what do we have control over. So that's why I always kind of come back to those basic things that, I think some of the beautiful things that have come out of what we're dealing with right now is so much of what we really need to be content is readily available and for free. It's humor and creativity and nature and just talking on the phone, and again, sharing our stories. And it's the things that we sometimes, we've taken for granted, but now we don't. We really realize, wow, these things are glue right now. And so, I think as parents, it doesn't mean that we don't show them our worries. I think that's a really natural and healthy thing to see, that we have a range of experiences and know how to convey that. But we also always back it up with, here's some of the other ways of looking at this, and here's how we together can get through it. And I always too, like, we're kind of on this sort of day by day over here. That's the kind of general theme I've been conveying, is like, let's just figure out how we want to make today a good day. What does each of us want to sort of bring to this, and not trying to go too far ahead. Because I know all of our fears and worries are really not being in the moment, or not being in what we have control over. And that's actually one of the things too, about, back to the original question you had about anxiety, really kind of the definition of anxiety is when we are thinking too far forward, or we are ruminating about past. We are not in what we have ultimately control over right now. So, that's one way to really help minimize your fear and anxiety, is stay very connected to the moment that we have in front of us.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you defined anxiety, because I think, and for me, I've talked about this before, I can definitely run very anxious, and it's because I'm thinking too far forward, and I'm thinking sometimes that the worst situation is going to happen. And the very unusual thing for me during the last 11 days, I've probably been calmer than I've been in years. I don't know why. But I think it's because, well, I guess I do know why. I think it's because I've been really just living in the day. And I have no control over what's going on. And so it's, when am I going to take a walk? And what am I going to make for dinner? And, talking to my kids, and what game are we going to play? And really just focused on enjoying everything that this unfortunate situation is bringing to my family. I honestly think, for me, I've been less anxious than I am on a normal day, which is very unusual. But for me, that's the silver lining. I don't know. And it could change tomorrow.
Well, and I've also noticed that So I typically don't run anxious like in my day-to-day life, and I've definitely been like a little more anxious than usual during this time. I think when my son was still at school and everything was unknown, up in the air, we were supposed to maybe travel, and that was causing like a lot of anxiety with me. And then now that everybody's like home and back in the nest, that's kind of settled down, I would say. But I have noticed that sometimes when I'm talking to girlfriends or other parents that I know, my anxiety, which is pretty low, can get ramped up by listening to what they're saying, or they can kind of almost, I feel like I'm being wound up by, well, what about this? And what about that? And da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I still want to connect with these people in my life, but I also need to understand how to listen to what they're saying without, internalizing it and kind of taking it in on myself, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, Marnie, I love what you're saying because it sort of goes to that, our fears and our worries and all that is contagious. It's sort of like the hoarding thing. We see people grab things, we think we need to grab them. We hear people worrying about some way we can contract this thing, and then we start going, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. Now I'm worried about that, So I think a huge piece of what all of us need to do is stay really aware of exactly what you're talking about. If certain amounts of information or contacts are what I call kind of like igniting that anxious reaction inside of you, it's really good to give that feedback to people, or also create kind of parameters for yourself around how many times are you going to allow yourself to get the news on what's going on. It's like we all have to put this in, I think, manageable compartments and allow ourselves time to just sort of rest from it. Our systems can only take so much, and we have to be kind to ourselves in that department. But I think too, it's like, I think, I did end up having a conversation with a nice little group last night, and it was kind of all about the current events and all of that. And then I had a previous gathering with people, and we didn't talk about it at all. And I felt awesome afterwards. It was like one of the most normal things I'd done in a while. And so I thought to myself, I might just suggest the next time I have, a little gathering, let's just not even talk about it. Let's just truly share other things right now, or allow ourselves like 5 minutes to just like, current topic, and then switch gears, because it truly is like, it's just, it's our systems are reacting to too much. It's just too much. And that is why that response is there. It's a regulator that tells us too much of that, so I think it's good that you're noticing that in yourself. And for you, Steph, like, I do think there's something very freeing too, to just not know what's coming. And so all you can do is plan for today. It is just liberating in a way.
Yeah. And maybe that's a topic for another day about, how busy and overscheduled some people are. And this is like a forced slowdown. And I think something, Kirsten, you were talking, and Marnie, you both were talking about, when you're kind of the energy too that some people are bringing, and the social media and being bombarded with the news, how much is enough, and setting parameters, like you said, Kirsten, around when you're going to watch the news. Don't have it on 24/7 if you realize that that's causing anxiety. But social media, I think, is very powerful, and it's been great to see people that you can't see that are posting photos and things like that. But then that can take you down a downward spiral of negativity, and there's been a lot of judgment we kind of talked about before we started recording. So I'd love your thoughts on that, and how can we navigate through. We're all in this together. We're all equal. The virus can impact every single person, regardless of race, ethnic, demographics, all those things, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you two can chime in on this as easily as I can too. I mean, I think all of us as parents nowadays are navigating this social media element for ourselves and our children. Again, it's sort of like building it and flying it and growing it all at the same time. We're truly figuring this out as we go. And this is the beauty of what I feel is the essence of my work, which is I'm always talking to people about, we have to notice in ourselves, we have to be in tune with our own system. That is our best guide for if we are doing something too much, or if it's affecting us in certain ways. So if you are looking at, posts for an hour and afterwards you just kind of find yourself feeling heavy or low or just kind of cranky or reactive, well, that's again where we have to look what we did that led up to the current feeling. We're not in a vacuum. We are a result of behaviors that led up to something. So that is the biggest thing that I'm constantly talking to my kids about, but also myself. I'm like, I can't preach it and not practice it. I have to be also really honest with, how is this, energizing me and making me feel more creative and inspired? Or did I take it too far and now I just feel like I'm not doing enough and I'm judging myself harshly? And I think our kids, truly are being brought up in this world where it's normalized at a whole different level. And we need to be having honest conversations about our own challenges with setting those limits.
And also with the news, right? Like,
yeah.
Even just how much news are you taking in? How much is too much? You want to stay on top of what's going on. You don't want to be totally cut off. But,
right.
Like for me, I know I've figured out now that if I look at the news before I go to sleep, usually am a really good sleeper. I start to worry about it.
Mm-hmm,
so I'm trying to digest that news in the morning and then not look at it for the rest of the day.
Yeah. That's actually a really good suggestion, Marnie, for everyone, right?
Yeah. All
we need sleep
stuff
right
before
now.
Bed. Yes. Well, and that was, I should have asked my husband if I can, tell our personal stuff, but I'm kind of an open book.
He's not listening anyway, right?
Right. He's not really a podcast guy anyway. I was noticing absolutely getting kind of like what I would call obsessed with news. Like it was, and truly from the perspective of and he started this a month ago, just I would call paralyzing worry about the economy and the impacts on people, and just how is this going to play out, and how could we possibly protect people's livelihoods, and just true. And it's what I really adore about him is that macro level sort of economic perspective. And I think that it was starting to it was like he couldn't rip himself away from it. But then what was happening is, as we slowly kind of got into more had to be in our house, and all of our outings were getting limited, I thought, oh my goodness, I was really seeing how much he was carrying that, and he was getting really just short with particularly me, but just all of us. He just seemed grumpier. And I finally said, I get it. You are really wanting to know about this, and he felt really responsible to know about it, to convey it to his world, of his professional world too. But he admitted, this is not serving me well at a certain point, and I do need to start creating some limits with it. And so I think, Marnie, it's none of us really were prepared for this. It's it all kind of came, and then we were learning all at once. And so it was like a slippery slope of just you had to hear the news to know. But I think now we know it's here, and now we know what we need to do. And so now we really can kind of set different limits on how much we're letting in, because it's a lot of repeating now. And so it's okay, I don't need to keep hearing the same stuff over and over and over, because it is just overload for all of us.
Exactly. And, we don't want our kids to be hearing that either.
Right. Well, and I am getting so much relief from all the humor and creativity that I'm seeing out there. That is just truly, I don't know, for me, I think in the end of the day, humor it just offers so much, I don't know, comfort to me. There's something about it. It's just kind of my best escape. So I've even been looking up some of my favorite comedians and just watching some of their old monologues, and just anything to just
laugh.
Sort of recognize laughter again, and just balance all this seriousness with this other piece of who we are as human beings.
Absolutely. And all the all these people doing their broadcasts from their home and their tent in the backyard, and you get to see part of their life. It's been funny. I agree about the humor part and the creativity. We have more time to be with ourselves and embrace the creativity and embrace some of those passions and things that we haven't had time to do.
Right.
The fact that puzzles are a hot commodity right now.
Oh my
and
gosh.
that they're sold out everywhere. I mean, I've had neighbors and people texting, so now we're going to do like a neighborhood puzzle swap because they go to the store and they can't get a puzzle, and then Amazon takes 5 days to get one and they need one before that. So
right.
I just ordered, after talking to you, Stephanie, yesterday, I just ordered 3 puzzles from puzzlewarehouse.com.
Oh,
but I think it is going to,
in the show notes.
Yeah, I think it's going to take about 3 to 5 days to get them, which is fine. Yeah. I mean, this is going to go on, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if we get puzzles in a week, we'll have something new to do.
You can always organize a drawer, right?
Yeah. Right, exactly.
And I've done that, so that's been good.
Yes.
So Kirsten, another thing you brought up in our conversation was about, how different families and different people are kind of reacting to, I don't know if you want to call it the lockdown or the shelter in place. Everybody kind of has their own rules and way to manage that. And you talked a lot about judgment and how to not judge another person for the way that they're managing themselves or their family. Can you kind of expand on that a little more?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was just starting to notice, even in posts or just in talking to people, is that people are definitely having a reaction to how other people are conducting themselves right now, whether it be, how they're letting their kids, use their time, or who's going where, or all of these things. And I just think it's a slippery slope when we get going on that. And believe me, we all do it. It's just very human. But if you think about it, it's really all generated out of that space of fear. I mean, whenever I find myself being judgmental of somebody else and their choices, it's because on some level it's threatening me, or I feel afraid for sort of my well-being. So even if I notice someone is judging me, I try to sort of access that part of myself that says, it's something is being threatened inside of them. And so I try to, see it from both sides. But I think that's going to be one of the pieces I would just hope all of us can try to do, is be really honest with ourselves around, if we're noticing that come up in ourselves, like, okay, I'm irritated that they're doing this, and, I'm making all these sacrifices, and they're doing, those people are out playing, whatever in their yard or whatever. I understand where that's coming from. It's from an authentic space of like, I don't want this to go on forever. And I'm afraid if you make poor choices and I'm making good choices, my good choices won't matter. So, it's from I think a sincere space, but it's just going to be really ugly if we all get into that place of like judging each other. I think we're all, need to have some trust that people are hopefully trying to function in their spaces. Because I think what's hard is if you have like a super extroverted kid too, it's a lot harder to keep that one indoors than it is your child that loves like curling up with a book for 8 hours a day, or does crafts, or likes to cook. I mean, I've found managing sort of what my daughters need to do in this has been a piece of cake compared to my active extroverted 12-year-old son. And so I am working really hard to figure out how I can rein him in and whatever, and just really hoping that people are giving me grace, that see him biking all over the neighborhood like a Looney Tune. I mean, I don't know how I can keep him, in this house for potentially weeks without getting out there and being part of the community. So yes, we're washing and we're exploring all those things, but it's that element of, I think all of us are sort of worried, like we're trying to balance the needs of ourselves and our family, but also, like, oh, how is everyone going to perceive this if I do this? And so anyway, I would wonder what you guys think about that too, just how do we sort of navigate that element, judgment?
I just going off of what you said about letting your son go outside and whatever, there's also a lot of information out there that's conflicting. You know, this organization is saying 7 days and this organization saying 14 days. And, you know, this one's saying, if you have a fever, do this. And so I think that that's just adding an extra layer of confusion and fear, because I don't think there's like definitive answers on what you do in various situations.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I think that just adds so much to the judgment and anxiety and stress of what is the right answer, because I don't think there is a right answer right now.
No, and we
So-
all
Really
have
isn't.
different comfort levels, right? As to how we're keeping our family safe and also protecting the greater good of the community and the world too.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think we just all have to sort of like check in with ourselves and say, is it serving me well to be judging other people's choices? Like, we just have to truly kind of look at ourselves and say, again, what can I control with myself and my family, and sort of balancing out how to keep the harmony in our little pod or in my community around me, and not getting into that sort of like fear-based kind of anger at others, because it's
Right.
just a kind of, again, it's that just spreading sort of the wrong kind of vibe out there. It's not serving us to wellness for sure.
And
Well,
I
no,
think
and
it's
to your-
sorry.
No, go
Just
ahead,
going to
Marty.
say, I think it's important also to take a step back and remember that nobody wants anybody to be sick.
Yeah.
Like, that's nobody's goal here. So
No.
everybody is doing the best that they can with what they have. And I think sometimes in this like fear-based setting or whatever you want to call it, it's hard to remember that and take a step back and remind yourself, nobody wants this. Like, there's nobody out there
Nobody
that
wants this. You're right. And the other thing, when you were saying that, just sort of like, it was also the biggest thing that I've been thinking about is, what is the number one thing that erodes sort of wellness physically and mentally? Well, it's stress. So
Yeah.
if we
Mhm.
are truly like, if I am conveying to my son, you know, just like, no, you can't leave this house, and you know, I mean, that is a setup for more sort of unhealthiness than anything. So again, I think we have to think about our immune systems as something that need to be not just, you know, disinfected, but also they need movement. They need we have to balance out that element, just the overall wellness. And so, yes, no one wants to spread illness or germs, but we do need to kind of promote sort of a more holistic wellness, you know, approach here. And I think that's what we all have to balance out.
Okay, that was beautiful. And I think that's
Mhm.
exactly what Marty and I have been talking about and what we firmly believe. And that was kind of where I was going to go, actually, just about the role that stress plays on our body.
Yeah.
And getting outside and moving, like, checks 2 boxes of things that I think are super important.
Yeah.
Probably more than 2 boxes, actually.
Yeah. Right.
And if
You
that's good for your son's mental and
Yeah.
physical well-being to get outside and bike around, he's not hurting I mean, in my opinion, I should say, he's
Right.
not hurting anyone. He's on a bike. You're like by yourself, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, and I think in our neighborhood, we have a couple families where the boys will bike together, but they know, like, we're like, you know, you got to keep your space. You're not touching each other. You're not
Right.
getting, you know, so but just, I think them seeing each other and sort of knowing like we're all in this together, just that is incredibly healing for his well-being right now. And I keep checking in specifically with him because, again, he just doesn't have a lot of resources to keep himself occupied in terms of like what he's interested in our home. He has a few things that he can do, but then I think in general, so much of where he is at in his boyhood is kind of like, I run with a pack. I'm all of this pack mentality, and it's as a mom to someone in that, I have to kind of balance that out, because it's just I don't know how I would lasso him, frankly. But we're just doing it under these like really sort of clear parameters. And I think the parents that we've chosen to sort of allow them to do that are under the exact same
Right.
Where the sort of the spirit of making our best choices but not letting them, be in contact, but sort of in their own way, kind of near each other. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you have to do that. And I think when we start to judge, we aren't putting ourselves in that person's shoes necessarily. And we have no idea what's going on in their life.
Right.
And they're doing the best they can with what they have. And their circumstances and situation is different than yours.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think that's one of the things that, in my work, I always go away with is when you sit with somebody and you hear what they're going through, there's no way you can't understand or like them or have compassion or empathy. It's like, it's all these common feelings that we're all just sort of trying to do our best, muddling along. And so I think that's the biggest thing is if someone's choice is bothering you, rather than going on this sort of attack or judgment, maybe just sort of inquire or ask or try to put yourself in their position or learn a little more before you go quickly to that space of anger and frustration.
right.
I think that's a fantastic bit of advice for people out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirsten, you've peppered in a lot throughout this conversation, but as we start to wrap up, are there any practical tips for anyone, whether it's parents or children or adults in general, to just help them manage and reduce their stress and anxiety? If you could leave them with one or two tips that would really help especially during this uncertain time, but really any time.
Yeah. Well, I love that you asked that, because as I was meeting with all my clients yesterday, it's like kind of comes back to some of the what I call the 101 sort of therapy tools. Is, I always sort of ask people in general, like when they come for a first session, it's like they're normally very nervous and really overwhelmed with whatever brought them there in the first place. And I always want to leave with like, what are a few things that are within your control? Like what, all these circumstances feel really overwhelming right now, but what are a few things in your control? So sort of like tip number one is like staying in the space of each day, we have a lot of things that are within our control and letting those be where you put your energy. So, part of why I'm so happy to be talking to you two today is like, I just feel like we always have within our control the way we take care of our physical body. So, the way we eat, the way we move, how we use quiet, supplements that we will take, just all the pieces that take care of our physical body are within our control right now. I think our use of alcohol is really important to watch right now. I know it seems like something that, or whatever substance you might, seek that brings you some immediate calm. It's also sometimes the thing that can really exacerbate that anxious and fearful feeling. Right in the moment, you might feel an immediate calm, or it might soothe something, but that residual in our system, it can really exacerbate sort of that overall generalized anxiety. So I'm
glad you're bringing
if I
that
don't bring
up.
that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have some worries about that, just because I know a lot of people are talking about that piece. And believe me, I'm an Irish girl. There's no one who loves a little something more than me, but I do feel like that's something that we all have to kind of be honest about how, again, that is impacting our overall feeling of wellness. And then just, I think one of the pieces that, we all learn about somewhere in our, lives is the I statements. So this is another little tip. So sort of that, what pieces are in your control, and sort of that physical wellness piece is something we always have control over. We don't always have control over external circumstances or even how others are toward us, but we do have control over sort of taking care of our general routine and our physical health, and looking at those pieces. So looking at your daily routine, looking at your physical health, how can you structure those pieces? We find a lot of calm in our routines and our rituals. So they've all been upset right now, but we can create a new normal. And I think a lot of us are now starting to move into that. It's like that first week, it was all just you know, stirred up and crazy and lost and all of that. But now we're kind of, I think, a little more resolved that this is where we're going to be for a while, and how can we create a new rhythm and rituals and routines that fit in this system we're in now. And then I think the other piece, what I was going to start launching into, is like just how we are talking to the people that we're interacting with the most. I've had to watch this in myself. I'm really working hard to promote this in our family, which is just, if you're frustrated by something you're seeing me do, or all of us are doing, it's like staying with those I statements. Because if we go at someone with you're doing this and it's bothering me, you're, you know, you, everyone's on the defense. We're very reactive with each other. And I think if we can just sort of softly enter into an honest way of communicating by, you know, it's, so the I statement's kind of the essence of it is just, I feel because, and we're just trying to be honest as we go here, because all of us are, I mean, just frankly, we're just not even sure how we're going to feel each day. I think, like you said, Marnie, you don't normally run anxious, but you're feeling anxious right now. So it's a good time to go to your partner and say, I feel really anxious because this, and sort of helping to identify what you need from that person. I noticed when you know, put your arm on my, you know, shoulder the other day, I just felt really comforted. I noticed when you helped me with this, it just felt calming, you know. So we have to give each other feedback as a way, you know, we have to teach people what we need. And the only way we teach them is if we offer sort of an honest assessment of what we're experiencing.
That was amazing. Like, I think what you just said is going to help so many people. Like,
it's going to help me
but
too.
we're all doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
And, you know, I think that you can have these discussions even with your family and your kids at the dinner table, now that you have more time to sit and have these discussions and teach them. These are like good life skills that you just shared. So thank you, Kirsten.
Yes, of course. Of course. Yes. Thank you guys. Great talking to you today.
As we wrap up the interview, we always like to ask our guests, you know, what does the art of living well mean to you? And that can be in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, wow. Well, I think we're always fine tuning that, right? And I think that's the thing for me, is just always staying curious and open and humble to changing and growing. You know, for me, a lot is like balance, but balance changes over time and what that looks like. So, you know, I promote so much with people I talk to, but also with myself. I think the biggest growth I've noticed with myself is just trying to notice in myself how I feel and how things impact me, and really ask myself and be curious about what that tells me about my values and what I need to work on. So, you know, it's just, it's keeping that balance of like, I want to work on certain areas, but I also need to take time to not be working too much on some things, and time for family and connection. So, you know, that piece of just being, I think, aware of what your system is telling you, and just always staying open to learning and growing is a big piece of, I think, the art of living your best life.
That's beautiful. So inspirational.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kirsten.
Yes.
This has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad that you are able to kind of come on the show last minute like this, because I think that everybody in the world needs to hear what you have to say right now. And if we can all just lift each other up and help each other through this.
Well, I think our mental health is an important piece. We're talking a lot about just being clean and being healthy, and I think taking care of that is a big part of the puzzle. And there's no shame in getting help and getting support. We all need that. And, you know, if I think right now is a time where, I mean, all of us as therapists are figuring out ways to reach our clients and reach anyone who needs that support. So I would encourage anyone who's just feeling really overwhelmed or lost to find someone that they can, get that. And it can be a friend too. It's just, the point is just, sharing is huge.
And how can our listeners find you if they want to talk to you more?
Well, you can search my name, Kirsten Clark Rewey, Birch Counseling. But I think too, on Psychology Today website, a lot of, I actually don't have a presence on that just because I've been carrying a wait list for a while, so I haven't been able to sort of field the various inquiries. But I think, finding out what your insurance may cover is a big piece of it. And so on the Psychology Today website, you can look at the different bios of various providers and what insurance they'll take, or what their cash rate is, or where they're located. So it can help you kind of narrow in on someone. But I think sort of referrals from friends, if you're comfortable. I get a lot of people asking me for referrals, and I'm happy to help with that, because I think sometimes just having, sometimes if I know someone and I can sort of connect them with someone I think might be a good fit. So, asking other therapists or people in your community who work in mental health or health in general that, know people in mental health, that's a great way to get connected with someone.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you. And we will link all this up and include the websites and where people can find you in our show notes. So,
okay, great. Yeah. Thanks so much. Yes.
Thanks, Kirsten. Have a good day.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right, spring is here, and that means it's time to spring clean our health. And Marnie, let's talk a little bit about our upcoming 7-day liver detox.
So we are running these community liver detoxes every season. We did one in January, and it went great. We had a nice big community with us. And Stephanie and I have been doing these detoxes for a while now, just trying to kind of remove that toxic load from our liver. And we both feel pretty awesome after we do them.
Absolutely. And everyone that's done one with us, and we've coached numerous people through this, everyone feels amazing. It doesn't honestly matter how clean you eat. Marnie and I eat pretty well, but inevitably there's toxins that get into our body, and we end up going through periods where we're drinking more and eating more sugar or processed foods. And this is just a great way to cleanse it all out.
Absolutely. And also, if you suffer from like digestive issues or low energy, or you have those intense cravings for sugar or salty foods, or even like
joint pain
and joint pain, or brain fog, this detox can really kind of jumpstart you and get you on your way to starting to remove some of those symptoms.
Absolutely. And I think that's what people say so often. It's such a great reset.
Yes. And a jump start onto a nice spring path, right?
Exactly. And I think with every season, that's always a good time to jumpstart your health. So let's talk a little bit about what they're going to get, what this program is going to provide them. I mean, there's going to be accountability and coaching, a private group.
You're going to get this awesome recipe book with recipes specific to the detox and daily emails that are really going to help you focus on your mindset and your self-care and
really like learning to tune into your body and understand how your body feels when you eat certain foods and when you remove certain foods. So
we're running this detox April 5th through April 11th. It's a 7-day detox. And if you don't want to or can't join the community portion of it, you can do it at any time.
And head on over to our website, which is theartoflivingwell.us/programs for more information.
And you can also listen to our episode 16 of the Art of Living Well podcast and hear Dr. Stephen Cabral talk a little bit more about why it's good to detox.
Yes. Hope you join us.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art of Living Well podcast. We are so grateful that you joined us today.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or anyone else you think may benefit from this information. We'd love for you to subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and tag the Art of Living Well podcast on social media.
If you want more inspiration in between episodes, you can find us on social media at theartofliving_well on Instagram and Facebook. where we will share snippets from our daily lives and our journey to living well.